Astor Street, where the dissipated waters of Rush Street flow, eventually wrapping themselves around the Cardinal's residence and flowing gently into Lincoln Park. As a very young boy, I was introduced to the Bateman School, situated on the corner of East Burton Place and Astor Streets in Chicago's Gold Coast area. Bateman. This was no ordinary school. Indeed, it had more in common with Hogwarts of Harry Potter fame than a normal school, as one of our alumni recently inferred. Situated on in the old McCormick Mansion, built in the 1800s, my alma mater was a magical place, filled with specialness, nooks and crannies, secret rooms, clawfoot bathtubs, a marvelous 4-story winding marble staircase, perfect for sliding from floor to floor. A walk-in soundproof phone booth that you could pack 20 kids in, and close to 90 rooms to explore. As an educational institution, Bateman would be considered progressive, but in regards to discipline, it was very much non-existent. The teaching staff and administrators were well-intentioned, and an aura of freedom and experimentation abound. The kids pretty much did what they wanted, when they wanted, and that is the genesis of this story. They usually didn't allow kids under 4 years into junior kindergarten, but my mom convinced the head of the school to make an exception for me. So I was in junior kindergarten at 3 years old, and now the things I saw in those first few years at Bateman influenced me my whole life. We were taught that if you had an interest in something, that it was okay to explore it. Curiosity was encouraged. The junior kindergarten was on the 4th floor, which makes sense. I mean, what adult wants to walk up flights of stairs? And, well, you got the idea. So, curiosity was encouraged, and one day in the middle of winter, I saw a pair of roller skates in the cloakroom. The cloakroom led to a rooftop playground that we used when the weather was nice. And the weather was not nice that day. The roof was covered in ice. I decided to put on the roller skates and go on to the roof. It didn't end well. I broke my collarbone after about 60 seconds on the ice. I was in a 3/4 body cast for a few months. And well, I finally got out, and in the spring things started to look up. And with the removal of my cast, I had renewed energy and attitude. I was ready to explore. I had seen groups of older kids leave the campus around lunchtime, and learned that not everybody in the school enjoyed the wonderful lunches as I did at Bateman. The food really was extraordinary and not institutional at all. More like homemade. Chicken pot pie, meatloaf, spaghetti were typical of the fare, and the kitchen staff was hard at work before dawn, before making sure there was a hot breakfast for everybody that wanted one. And from the faculty to the students, no one was ever turned away, anytime during the day. If they were hungry, they could eat. And even in the middle of the afternoon. So even though I loved the food at Bateman, The idea of taking a walk off campus during lunchtime appealed to me. The fact that I was only 5 years old didn't matter, and it didn't enter into the equation at all for me, as far as I was concerned. It was a beautiful, warm spring day, and the ice and snow has melted and dried. There was a fresh breeze off Lake Michigan that blew a few butterflies into the school courtyard. Man, things were popping, and spring had sprung. So, it was out of the courtyard, through the archway, where the carriages once pulled up, and waited until the guests or master of the house summoned them when it was time to leave, and out into the alley. The alley was made of the original brick laid in the 1870s until you got to the end of the block and turned the corner. Behind the Cardinal's house, Cardinal's mansion, there were bricks that were made of wood. And they were laid in the 1850s before the Chicago fire. I remember discovering the square wood bricks and stooping down to examine the texture and craftsmanship, marveling at the various subtle shades of gray. Every brick was different, like snowflakes. Some were like half moons. Others had concentric circles where it was cut from the center of the tree. And the wooden bricks had a unique buoyancy to them, good for jumping. So I bounced and jumped to the end of the alley. Taking a closer look at the Cardinal's house as I was walking, I noticed they sure had a lot of chimneys. And they must have been nice and warm in the winter, I thought. Then I saw it. Yellow. As far as I could see. It was bright, vibrant hue, beaming, almost pulsating and smiling at the world. Dandelions. Non-stop dandelions with small patches of green here and there, which only served to make the yellow look even more gleaming and a stark contrast. Now I was faced with a dilemma. I had a street to cross. Well, it was no choice at all. I had to cross that street. And I had to cross that street. There were dandelions. I had never seen so many. And I was across the street in about 2 seconds. I ran about 30 feet and dove into a roll and ended up nose first in a sea of yellow. It was warm, and a bit of humidity rose from the earth. And a fresh breeze cut through every few seconds, just enough to cool you off. It was just then that I realized that an army of bumblebees were spread out over the scene, slowly and lazily flying from one flower to another, the next, doing whatever it is that bees do. I wasn't scared at all, unless a bee came too close, and that only happened once. And that big furry bumblebee didn't seem as interested in me as I was in him. And he flew on his merry way. Looking closer into the world on the ground, I noticed the ants, also busy, building something underground, which I assumed was a new summer home. One by one, in a single file, the ants exited their hole, each carrying a grain of sand or a small piece of stone. The ants, I was always amazed at the purposefulness of which they did their job, and wondered how they knew what to do. With my book as my pillow, I turned over on my back and directed my attention towards the sky. Big, fluffy, white clouds slowly drifted across and drifted up, backed up by a deep blue sky. The sun was warm. The sun was warm on my face, and I shut my eyes, and then I heard it. It was faint at first, but as it got closer, I could hear the hum of a single-engine airplane. As the plane flew above me, directly above me, I opened my eyes and saw it, silver and shining in the noonday sun, and I smiled. That sound, the sound of the propellers, in that moment, the sun warming the park, and the bees buzzing, and the fluffy clouds above, and the yellow dandelions surrounding me, that sound defined the most perfect moment in my life. And it will stay that way forever.